It starts off with cats, right? Yeah, it's good. But I still don't know. Probably that person. I will ask. Yeah.
All right, I think we can start. All right, okay, so it's 7:30. So again, if you haven't grabbed pizza or Coke, please feel free to grab some food. So we'd like to thank everyone who's braved the traffic to come here for the Product PH meetup. We're here to talk about crafting roadmaps. So who among you here are in a product management, product owner function and responsible for creating roadmaps? Anyone? Okay, we have a couple of people here who are in user experience or user interface design, interaction design. Also, a lot of people. Okay, a lot of you guys here. Who among you are in software engineering, quality assurance? Okay, all right, great. Any other function? Marketing, sales, support. Anyone? Operations. Anyone else? Okay, all right. Okay, so we'd like to. Hopefully, we'd like to kind of discuss a very relevant topic, especially now it's January. So a lot of you who are working for product companies. Typically, this is the time to start presenting the roadmap. So hopefully, you'll have a lot of takeaways from this session today. But before we get started, I would like to call Kat to welcome us to Penn Brothers, our lovely sponsors for this evening.
Hi guys, welcome to Penn Brothers. For those of you who doesn't know about Penn Brothers, we are a talent partner for startups from across the world. So we help them build their team here in the Philippines, and then we base them in one of our co-working spaces. And just recently, we launched this project called Penn Brothers Launchpad, wherein we wanted to support organizations such as Product PH to provide them like an avenue wherein their community can meet, or do networking and events here at our space. So in the future, if you guys are planning on doing events that will like bring impact in the startup community or in your community, let us know. Just approach me. I'll be here. Shows will be here. And we'd be happy to support you guys. Without further ado, Product PH.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, okay, so let's get started. So my name is Jan. I'm one of the volunteers of Product PH. With me is Yana. And our volunteer for tonight, Tim, our lovely videographer. So, all right, so let's get started. So, what I'll do is I'll start introducing the guests one by one and let them talk about themselves, right? So, in no particular order. So, let me call first. Ray. Please have a seat. And then Brian. Oh, come on down. All right. And then Johan, please join us in front. All right. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so first, tell us about yourself. So I'll start off with maybe Johan. What do you tell us what you do and where you work and what you're responsible for? Yes.
Okay. What I'm responsible for? Obviously, I'm responsible for product. I work with OpenPort. It's a supply chain and logistics technology company that morphed into a supply chain financing platform for banks and other fintechs. Currently work with Union Bank and Activine, TradeSpace, and proud to announce in South Africa very soon a new branch. Yeah, basically I'm kind of like flustered right now.
Okay.
Running after.
But good answer. All right. Okay.
Thanks.
How about you, Brian? What do you do?
Hello, I'm Brian. So I lead product at First Circle. A competitor of ours is Accudine. So we have Accudine on the couch in a competition sphere.
We almost did sign an agreement. I mean, like, Yvonne just like risk.
If the product was better. So I lead product at First Circle. What First Circle do is we lend finance to SME businesses here in the Philippines. So we lend supply chain financing. So typically a company will come to us that lends to another, or that supplies goods to another business. So for example, SM. So let's take you manufacture shoes or something, and SM place an order with you for 1,000 pairs of shoes. What we typically do then is when that order comes through to a small SME business, they will upload that onto our platform. We will then verify and go through a couple of checks, and then we digitally, without meeting anyone, we risk score that, and then we disperse finance directly into the supplier's bank account, which enables those businesses to then meet those orders that they wouldn't otherwise been able to meet due to financing or working capital constraints. So what First Circle aims to do is really provide a meritocratic way based on data rather than relationships or kind of existing contacts that you might have in the banking industry, and rather get into an area that is really underserved by the banks, certainly here in the Philippines and actually globally, but here it's a much more prescient issue. And so that's what we've been doing for the last, I'd say, 3.5 years in a couple of different guises. And we've gone through a couple of iterations of both our actual product. So it's interesting in First Circle when we talk about product, we tend to mean both the finance and the tech that we use to do that. Because ultimately our product is a combination. People come to us not because they like to use our onboarding flow or the KYC flow, but they come to us because they want capital and they want it fast, and it enables them to grow and build bigger businesses. So ultimately when we talk about product at First Circle, we spent the first 2 years debating on what that word meant. So I don't know how common that is across everyone on the couch or everyone in the audience, but that's been an interesting journey. So at the moment, I lead, we have a product team of 3 to 4 people, and we have designers and we have 8 engineers, as well as a lot of operations people.
Great. About you, Ray?
Okay, so
Hello.
hi.
So
I'm Ray. I work with True Money Philippines. I lead the product team there. We're basically, what we're trying to do is to build financial centers in all of your barangays. So we don't compete with either First Circle or or the other one. But what we try is build financial centers in all of the barangays, and we work with your local sari-sari stores. Try to enable each each neighborhood so that they don't have to either spend so much in commuting just to avail of simple financial services, like for example, getting their remittance from their loved ones abroad or from Manila or any other major cities, paying your bills, which amazingly in the provinces, we talk to billers a lot, we talk to local billers, and they still don't understand why they need to put up individual offices for them to process your payments. They still like to see lines in their offices. So those are the things that we always want to improve on. And we offer a lot more. We enable the sari-sari stores to do so much more than just being a one-stop shop for your shampoo or suka or whatever.
All right. So it seems like all 3 of you somehow are in fintech. So I don't know if that was by design or by accident, but that's good. At least you guys have something in common. So
Seems like it was premeditated.
all right.
Knowing you.
So fintech. So really interesting, very fast growth area, right? This area, especially a lot of startups cropping up in this space. So what differentiates what you do? I know you kind of touched on this already, but kind of explain what differentiates what you do, let's say from those sitting on the couch and from other players in the fintech space, and talk about who your customers are and how you make money.
How we make money.
Yeah. That's probably the most important aspect of it.
I'm sure I'm gonna partner with him.
Okay.
We don't make any. No, just kidding. So for True Money, I guess the difference. So fintech is just a very large space, and everyone who's trying to do anything that touches anything on the wallet or money suddenly becomes like fintech, which is understandably so. But for True Money, what we're really aiming for is to serve all our provinces. So actually, we've been able to build or acquire a sari-sari store, which is a True Money center in our terms, in every island in the Philippines already. So that's from Polillo Island to Bananes, Tawi-Tawi, Sulu. Don't ask me who they are. I probably don't know how. Those are very, very, and even Eastern Visayas. So I guess our main differentiator is that we try to be true to who we wanted to like serve from the very beginning. And so far we've been successful in doing so. So maybe I hope we can still be successful in the next couple of years as we try to like, increase the level of like financial services in all of these provinces.
How about you, Brian?
Yeah, no, I would actually echo that. In terms of, I suppose the word is that I would say is kind of reach. And so at First Circle, we kind of try to reach to areas of the market that are underserved currently. And I suppose that reach can manifest in two ways. Number one is geographically. So we have one office, and that office is in BGC, and we have 80 to 90 people in BGC. Yet we're nationwide. So we do lending in every province in the Philippines from that office. So if you clearly contrast that with a bank, that doesn't exist, quite clearly. So I suppose the first one, the main thing around fintech is, for me, is reach, and that the first dimension is actually geographically, because the power of the internet enables you to kind of reach anywhere. And the second one in terms of reach is really areas of the market that couldn't be served, because if you think about what we do as a business, we underwrite, meaning that we try to understand the risk associated with lending to certain businesses. And to do that is very difficult. How it's generally been done here is relationship based, and to an extent across the world is based on relation. Do I know this person? Is it a trustworthy person? Have they got a good business? Have I seen the business? Does it exist? Then I will extend credit to it. To do that in the Philippines, or to do that with fintech, I suppose, is what we are trying to do. And so the way you do that when you don't physically have locations and people is you need to try and use data. And that's something that we have worked tirelessly on, because it is our future as First Circle, to be able to grow this, because that's where the scalability comes from, and that's how we're able to reach areas of the market down. So if you think about what the banks do, certainly in the Philippines, they cater to the top of the market very, very well. If you're Ayala, you can get a loan from BPI, no problem. But not everyone is Ayala. So when you start to look at the 50 to 100 people businesses, that's where the real growth and employment is coming from in this country, and in most countries that are really rapidly developing. Yet it's totally underserved, because banks, A, in my view, don't really care, and B, they don't really understand how to underwrite the risk associated with that. And so there really is no appetite to get involved. And so that's where we see the market. That's where it's underserved, and it's underserved to the tune of $50–60 billion in the Philippines alone. And so if we can crack it, then that's where you get that's where the power of data, coupled with the reach in terms of geography and in terms of area of the market, to get that slice of the market is the real power of fintech for us. And we're not there yet, but the journey will continue. But it has been a difficult one, but we are seeing good traction, and we're starting to really figure out ways using things like network analysis and to understand relationships based on the data that we see, and to be able to underwrite successfully.
How about you, Johan? What does OpenPort do? What makes you different?
Well, it's actually complementary to these two fintechs, and I mean, so much so that we actually wanted to work with First Circle. We still do, in earnest, really. OpenPort strategy to enter the market is by enterprise. So we work with FMCGs, large multinationals. I think you might have seen some of the Nestle videos, testimonials from Pakistan and India. Now, that entry is very steep. Enterprise sales is very steep, but we started off as a technology company for supply chain, not as a fintech. It evolved into a fintech when transporters started to say, okay, can we use this system because I'm using your shipment your dispatch system, your EPOD and your driver app, also your micro rewards and GCash disbursement. Can I use the system to now factor my invoices with banks? We didn't have a financial mechanism back then. This was like Q1 2018. We started building a liquidity portal that actually sent to certain banks, actually just one bank and one fintech. You can Google this. And depending on the rates and the approval velocity of a company, they would then choose, okay, I'll go with this bank or I'll go with this fintech. That's basically our business model, to be able to like lend and have the banks underwrite with a lower rate of risk because they're using the closed system, the closed loop system. So it's basically tying in the shipper, the transporter, the goods distributor, as well as the consignee, the receiver of the goods. Key accounts only. We don't have retail stores as of yet. We'll be launching a new product soon that actually will go down to retail stores. And this is where True Money actually and First Circle come in actually. So right now we're starting to see we're the enabler in between the shippers wanting to Nestle. They want to be able to extend more credit to their distributors. We don't have that credit. We don't have money. The banks do, and they want to be able to get a book of business from the Nestle's. Since they're a corporate account of ours, then we enable them to actually expand that. So obviously, yeah, Brian, you obviously know this. And the point being here is we're enabling all four parties to be able to like look at one system of record. Basically, it's one system of record, which is a shipment record. I kind of cringe saying that because I came from NetSuite, and it's kind of the NetSuite slogan, but we both came from there. It is actually what drives this. It is the inspiration. Banks never have that one piece of information sitting in their grasp. They're always texting, emailing, God knows whatever they're doing. Fintechs more so. Maybe you leapfrog the banks in many ways. First Circle is actually ahead in terms of technology now in all comparison. So that's what we do basically.
So all very, very interesting. So you serve very different customers. So you enterprise and your supply chain partners.
Acquisition models, yeah.
Right, and you're really serving small businesses, really. Is that fair?
Yeah, so most of our companies would be between 10 employees to 100. That's
Right.
kind of the sweet spot to who we cater for. So they're SMEs, yeah, small to medium enterprise businesses. We do have on occasion kind of some larger businesses as well, but that's the market. we're
Largely
on.
small, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you serve the grassroots, right? Like really the barangays,
Yeah.
and then using the sari-sari stores like a channel for providing financial services. So those are really, really interesting business models, really, really interesting concepts. Where did those ideas come from? Are these were your companies founded here? Were they founded elsewhere? So what's the history there? Your turn, Johan.
Hot seat. So OpenPort's founder is American. He's a really awesome product guy. And OpenPort being a Hong Kong-based company with offices around India, Pakistan, China, well, the countries you really think are emerging markets, and they are. There's so much opportunity there. Those are the countries that we operate in. And the idea actually came across, like at least the liquidity solution, the supply chain part of it, just came across the need of our existing customers.
Is the Philippines just like a branch office or like an R&D center? Is it one of your major markets? So what role does the Philippines play in your
The Philippines is basically our laboratory.
Okay.
So, because it's this country actually has almost exactly the right mix of adoption, eagerness, and risk appetite. The SMEs here barely understand what the fintech means, but they actually go in and jump and say, okay, I'll apply with First Circle. I'll go with Akidim instead of going traditional banks and then go through a needle of how do you do that? Go through whatever hoops that they need to go through to get a bank loan. They can go and do that easily with First Circle and Akidim. Frankly, these two companies, and there are a lot more, are actually giving these SMEs a lot of access to capital. But the appetite for the banks here are also pretty good. The banks that we work with here are very, very tech savvy. They understand blockchain. Not that that's the silver bullet to solve things. So, and our development team is here.
So you basically saw the Philippines as a great market to kind of test out the business model, the ideas, and adoption, and so on.
Well,
Right.
the addressable market in terms of loss for supply chain, like costs, are also big.
Are also high. Okay, lots of friction, in other words. How about you, Brian? Like, tell us about this your first circle.
Yes.
You don't seem Filipino to me.
Why not? I feel like I'm getting there. So First Circle was founded by two Irishmen, and I'm also from Ireland. So Patrick and Tony are the two co-founders, and I suppose Patrick worked for Compare Asia Group. You actually worked with him. So Patrick worked for Compare Asia Group after working in investment banking in London for a couple of years, and I think what Patrick was enthralled by when he came to the Philippines was, like you said, the addressable market, the size of the market that was here, and the opportunity that presented itself. And it certainly is. It is a fascinating place to start to grow a company. I think on a more operational note or a practical note, it's quite easy to deal with building a company here as an Irishman when you can speak the same language as everybody else. So that certainly played into it. And I think in terms of what the initial idea and the iterations on the product and what the business plan was, it was very iterative. I think maybe we might touch on roadmaps and stuff in a little bit, but it was more, I would say, I don't think Patrick will mind me saying, but it was a kind of a top-down approach. I'd say he looked at the macros in terms of, I see $50 billion shortfall here in kind of structural financial underserving of the market, and I'm going to go after that. I can do that. So as an ambitious 26, 27-year-old, he said that, and kind of fast forward 3-4 years later, and we are going after it. So that was the journey.
How about True Money?
For True Money, the idea to build something out of your local stores isn't actually new. So local stores, I don't know what they call it, mom and pop stores, your tita, auntie stores all over Asia, all over the world, isn't actually new and trying to build more out of that. But and actually, True Money Philippines is in the network of True Money. It's actually I believe the third country. So we opened up first in True Money Cambodia, then Myanmar. So those are neighboring countries, and then we went, we built something in the Philippines, True Money Philippines. So, and also over here, it's we have Smart Padala, you have your GCash outlets, you have your pawn shops. There's actually a lot of competition out here to start a financial center in a local area, but what we've tried to the thing that we tried to do differently is that we provided the technology and we adjusted to the infrastructure of the Philippines. So for the most part, everyone would actually think, let's put up smartphones. Let's use smartphones because that's what they do. But I'm not sure of the entire. I hope nobody's from Globe or Smart here. So I don't know the actual numbers, but basically the country still runs in 2G. So if you know anything about telco, then you know that's not a very efficient way of transferring data. So it is as fast. It's a misconception. It is fast, but it is it can handle big amounts of data, but it is slow. Sorry, not fast. Slow. 5G is fast. Same amount of data. So that's what differentiates True Money, I guess, is that we invested in the technology and we try to adjust for the Philippines infrastructure. In different markets, in different countries, they use smartphones. So,
all right. So okay. So let's talk about some of your companies were established elsewhere. It's interesting that the non-Filipino you guys started here in the Philippines.
We're a completely Filipino company.
All right. More so than your guys
With
on your right and left.
with operations only in the Philippines,
Right,
now.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like true Filipino. All right. So so tell us about how you plan your products. Like how you said the founder thought about this market opportunity, then you iterated. Talk us through how this iteration came about and how you arrived at this business model and the product you have now.
Oh,
was it like a flash of insight that all of a sudden, oh, here's the roadmap for the next 4 years. Here's what we'll do.
So, yeah, so I suppose, as I said, our product, or the concept of product at First Circle is the combination of kind of data, I suppose the UX or the tech onboarding and kind of tech interface, given that we're geographically agnostic and we serve the whole country. And then thirdly, the actual capital that we provide in the form of purchase order or invoice lending. And so you kind of really need to consider, unfortunately, the product as a sum of those parts. And so, to go back to the question, Jan, the iteration of that actually, when I first got here, we did a completely different type of lending. We did an amortized loan, which is basically, we lend out an amount, I don't know, 100k pesos, and you paid us back in, say, 10 installments of 10k each. So that's what we initially did. There was reasons for that. Mainly, if you think about our business, it's very capital intensive. So as a startup, we had 2 rounds of seed, and we had kind of 15 people in a room with post-it notes on a wall of the customers that we had. That apartment, unfortunately, it's gone, but if we ever make it big, that would have been a nice kind of relic to have in the museum, all our customers on post-its, because we couldn't afford a CRM. But the initial one was that, so we were capital constrained, and we lent out amounts of money and people paid us back in installments, which was very, like, it wasn't done in a very tech way. It was like essentially a type form. You applied and then you gave us some documents over email. And so what we actually started doing, some of the first tech that we built was building inside out. So we actually started with what do we need internally. So we needed a risk processing engine, we needed to encode data, we need to store that in a very structured way so that we build this over time. We need to see things like delinquency and performance of loans as we lent them out, and track could we then gain insights as to what were the determining factors that would tell us about risk profiles in the country. So we built everything from scratch. And so there was a lot of learnings, and there was a lot of heated arguments. There was a lot of crying about not building customer flows on my part, mostly. And so what we did then is we sat down, we looked, and we raised another round of funding. And what we'd learned in the amortizing loan world was that the product, in terms of the capital, wasn't very good. Because if you're an SME and we lend you 100k, and 2 weeks later you owe us 10k, you're not really able to use that money in a very productive fashion to ultimately grow. And that's what we present ourselves as a company that can aid your growth. And so we pivot maybe a strong word, but we moved into trade financing of purchase orders and invoices, which I don't know how many people are familiar with the dynamics of that, but it's essentially one payment. So we supply the funding that allows you to go manufacture your goods. In the case of a purchase order, you then deliver those goods to a big corporate, and then that corporate will pay you back, and you pay First Circle. And so it's kind of a one-stop transaction, and that's coupled to the growth because you make a profit margin on the manufacture of the goods. And so it's kind of like a value share proposition that we have. And so I suppose the iterations on the core kind of financial product was that we got something out in the market, we tried it out, we saw what we learned, we saw what kind of risk was happening, and then we raised more capital, we raised debt, and then we changed our to a more kind of amenable or better suited product to kind of hit that product market fit kind of curve. And then we started to double down and build all our tech again. So last January we kind of ripped everything up on the customer side and built everything again from scratch. That was a fun time too. That was 3 months, and we're kind of doing another iteration of it now and looking at rebranding and hiring in designers and product people here. We're going again. So that's the journey.
Nice pitch. All right. Just your background. So it's interesting that trade financing can be very complex. Do you have a background in finance? Like, how did you understand how to build the products needed for this kind of business?
Wikipedia. Yeah, really good at spending.
All right.
No, so my background, I studied engineering, so I'm an electronic computer engineer from Ireland, and then I did hardware engineering for a little while, and in a company called Analog Devices, where it kind of struck me at one point when I knew that my colleague came over to me with a book on, I think it was calculus of some sort, where he said, you got to check this one out. And I looked at him and said, I think I'm in the wrong field. I do not love sparks and calculus as much as this guy. So then I moved into consulting, and then from there I worked my way around to New Zealand and a couple of other places, and then called up Tony, he's the CTO who I knew from university, and I went from the most tranquil place in the world, Wellington, New Zealand, to Terminal 3. To Terminal 3, and I had Tony in a taxi with his head out the window. I'd flown through, I think it's called the Four Capitals flight, Wellington, Canberra, Singapore, Manila. And I got out tired, and Tony was hanging out of a taxi saying, I just booked us a trip to Boracay, get in. And so we went straight to Terminal 4, and it was Halloween in Boracay, and I've been here since.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it.
Now I know why you stayed. Okay.
Onboarding by co-founder and CTO Tony Ennis of First Circle.
Right.
Yeah, that was the most awesome welcome ever.
I have pictures, but
So how about you, Johan? Like, tell us about how you plan your products. You mentioned you came from a big corporate enterprise software company. Is that what you did when you joined OpenPort?
It was a lot of that actually. So the company I was with before, I worked with a relatively big ERP company. They had really good structures, bright people, really awesome processes. And I wasn't a product manager at first. Like when I joined NetSuite, I was, frankly, the title was project manager. I was doing e-commerce shops. And it was just simply designing and talking with customers, like pre-selling and running all of the projects from one PMO. In NetSuite, it was totally different. We had to have what we call a customer journey back then. And actually that carried through to OpenPort. I couldn't actually step out of that mindset where the CEO would tell me, okay, here's our target market right now, here's what we're serving, and I want to be able to like get into this new niche, this new business model. So it was a very difficult process to be able to like educate people, here is what our journey should look like. And then get their consensus, iterate on that, walk through validation with actual customers and say, oh, okay, I actually was wrong in this step, and let's tweak it a bit. And then start building off of that and continue changing the software, the process. Even our development process has changed with the need to release faster and faster. So, and I didn't suffice to say, I frankly didn't know a lot about financial processes. I still don't. I'm not really ashamed to admit that, but yes, Wikipedia is helpful. You just have to read out the Rappler type goods. But there's a lot of good stuff there. But I reached out to a lot of friends in banks, so I just had to understand how banking operations worked. And we were working with a bank. So they weren't sharing, they were very, very open in sharing their processes, but I needed to validate, is this actually industry standard? Is a simple thing like a promissory note really needed? So, those things actually counted because we needed to build those checks and balances in our software, in our process. But yeah, I think like you just need to be able to like admit where you fall short, what you don't know, and read, talk, and absorb everything. Because you as a product owner, you're bound to not know 80% of what you're actually doing until you're talking to people who actually know.
All right. Okay. So I guess Brian has more like a emergent kind of planning process in the beginning, whereas you started off, I guess, with a more deliberate planning, then learning along the way. I'm gonna change the question a little bit for Ray. Like, what is your planning process now? What is it like? How do you plan your product that you manage in TrueMoney?
What is planning?
This is about road mapping. By the way, let me remind you, this is about road mapping. So,
Yeah,
so
so
please share us your insight.
I guess the way we go about it is, it sounds very cliche, but I think it's very important that everyone in the room understands where you're coming from, and that's where consistent planning happens actually. So you can plan for different projects very, very well, but if if everyone in the room understands the goal and objective differently, then it won't go nowhere and it won't gain any traction. So I guess that's where we start in True Money, is we all understand where we're coming from, is we're serving the ones in the provinces and we're serving our sari-sari stores, and our product is actually that. From there, we basically throw and ask and figure out what are the basic things that people need, what is their problems. We went out and actually, we still go out. It's actually a regular exercise for us to go out in the field and go wherever we can go and ask sari-sari store owners what their problems are, what do their customers ask for, no matter how irrelevant it is to actually finance. Then from there, we figured out, hey, apparently everyone just goes out to the sari-sari store and buys their local goods, very in small sachets as Filipinos do. But along the way, they also figured out that they also need a good place to pay their bills, pick up remittance. They still spend, and on average, I think 45 to 70 pesos. Not in Manila, maybe in Manila when you take a taxi or a Grab. But overall, it's still very expensive. So we listen to that, we still listen to that, and the way we build is we serve and build the products that people will need. If a sample local electric provider has X thousand of customers still lining up every week, we go after them. We talk to them. If they don't have any developers, we offer our developers and say we will build something for you. They balk at it at first and say you must be crazy, and also can I see the contract? But that's the extent of how we always want to build things, and that's what we repeat every single time.
So Ray, so you're a fairly senior guy at True Money. So you tell me, you're probably very busy. So are you telling us that you actually go out and visit the barangay in Tawi-Tawi and ask them?
Still.
So how often do you do that?
For me, I would like to be able to do that every month actually, but I only get to do it once every 3 months. Just because in product you're just building things, but if there's any excuse to go out, we definitely go out and say we need to just visit a random city, for example.
And how does that translate into the planning? How do you communicate the value of going out? Like maybe people are just asking your company, Ray is doing a junket na naman, beach na naman sa Boracay. So how do you show that there's actually okay. How do you actually show that there's value in doing that when you present the plan?
Since everyone goes out, like even our CEO, she's actually the one who's most out. So since everyone is mostly out and trying to understand the problems in far-flung barangays, we don't really need to talk about it. Sometimes it's the difficult thing is when different high-profile problems exist. Like for example, Brooks Point, Palawan has no signal. But they have a lot of copra farmers there who want to get their share of the profits or the sales. So the only way to do that is actually someone rides on a bike, has probably 2 million pesos in their pocket, goes to Brooks Point, Palawan, distributes that to all the copra farmers. So we figured out if you went there, what's actually the base signal? 2G can function here, so okay, probably we can do something about it. Or Polillo Island, there's actually no remittance center there before. Probably, I think there was only one, and the only way to shuttle money in and out of the island is actually go on a boat. So if you're probably lucky and don't do anything, but you probably are sitting with people who have millions of pesos in their pockets as well. And that's Polillo Island, that's already in Quezon, which is supposed to be an easy commute, right? So I guess that's, if you go out and everyone religiously does that, then it's not as difficult to explain what issues you need to address.
And do you present that? Like there's a formal step in your, typically like you have an annual plan, right? Or quarterly planning or whatever. You actually make time to actually present that, like what these insights that you get from your trips.
Not as formal as that. We talk about it as soon as we get back to the office.
Yeah,
so we talk about it, everyone talks about it. So, and everyone shares their experiences.
Okay. How about you, Johan? You mentioned you have offices in Pakistan, South Africa. Do you actually go out and visit these exotic locales?
South Africa is good. I actually went to Aliwal North 2 weeks ago. That's 25 hours of flight. Pakistan is also very interesting. So I've been to all of our areas.
And what is the value of that? What is the value of that when you're planning, when you're doing a roadmap?
This is the reality of things. When you're in an office, you think something works as you researched it to work. Especially in supply chain, you tend to think every company, even the same multinational company that you're serving in the same 3 countries you have contracts with, are actually different. They have this thing called standard operating procedure in this country. They have zero tolerance in this other country. Zero tolerance for damaged goods, for example, in this country. And in the Philippines, they have ISO processes that they have to comply to. A lot of these, and these are we're just talking one company, one customer. A lot of these you will not know until you actually sit there in the warehouse sweating like a dog with the drivers, understanding how they're missing that big red button that says unload goods. That's the real pain of things. And I've always been driving this to even my team, my BAs right now. Johan, this is the best way. We already designed a blue button there, a red button that says do not click unless you're actually unloading goods, for example. This is a supply chain process. The driver still misses it. Why? Because he's scared to click that red button. Because in this country, red means bad. Don't click. It's as simple as that. We had to build a WeChat app in China because our app wasn't simple enough. Okay, what do you mean by simple? It's not in Chinese. It's not embedded in our WeChat app because all of the drivers in China happen to use WeChat. So they won't install anything else other than a WeChat wrapped app. So things like these are, it will be common sense for folks that actually live in those countries. And for you sitting in the Philippines, trying to project or like understand how those other countries that you're serving work, it's going to be very difficult unless you visit them actually and work with the drivers, the dispatchers, the operators. So.
All right. So how about you, Brian? You're right now just focused in the Philippines. Like, how do you plan this out? Like, do you talk about? When you sit around and doing your planning and road mapping, you kind of lay out, okay, we wanna support messenger and advertising, whatever. Like, what does your roadmap process look like, and how do you present it and share it with the team so that they understand where you want to go?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and to be honest, it's something you think about a lot because there is no real right answer to this, and every time you try to do it, you upset somebody or you try to learn. You know, maybe if I tried this or that, and kind of hindsight is always 20/20. So it's this kind of constantly in revision process. Certainly for me, I don't know, but I would say how we do it at First Circle, or how we try to do it at First Circle, is we certainly in terms of time frame we look on a quarterly basis. So we look at every quarter and we sit down and we try to determine across all the different business unit heads. So people in risk, people. Operations, people in sales, etc. And we all try and map out what we think the future looks like. And you can use different frameworks for that. You can use KPIs. What we've recently started doing is OKRs, objectives and key results. And I think the interesting bit where product sits is we tend to be kind of the outcome of those discussions in a way, but then also drive them in another way. And so you kind of tend to see, certainly in our business, you know, risk want to do this, but commercial want to do this, and we want to launch a new product, and we want to change our credit limits, and sometimes they can be in opposition, and product kind of need to be that kind of the ham in the middle of the sandwich that's kind of coming between everything and then kind of driving it through. And so maybe that analogy does not work, but it tastes good. But that's kind of how kind of we do it at First Circle, and I think where my learning and where I've gone wrong is if you have an ego in this or you think your idea is the best, which is why the guys talking to customers is it sounds easy, but it's incredibly hard, A, for the time, and B, to actually synthesize what customers are telling you and what, like, trash out what you can deliver and what problems you can solve and why and how that can grow. But I think certainly even internally, kind of not sitting there being, well, I have the idea, I understand how it's done, we have the firepower and engineers and designers to get it done, and you don't know what you're talking about. Because that always is the wrong way of doing it. And I've been there. So yeah, I think that's why OKRs right now works very well at First Circle, because it's a framework of guidelines that really rallies alignment and creates focus on kind of a couple of things and builds that transparency. And so everyone then trusts each other to an extent and builds towards one kind of goal.
So explain that further. Like, why does OKR work for you? Like, how does it work? Like, if somebody here was interested in implementing like this OKR framework, objectives and key results, like how would they go about doing it? And why did it work for you?
So I can't take credit for doing this. Is probably the first thing. So we actually have kind of a governance team or something we call that rolled out OKRs in First Circle, and I think I'm really thankful to them for doing it. Broadly, how it works is everyone in the company sets objectives. So from the CEO all the way to an engineer, and we'll have objectives, and they'll work kind of up and down and even across the organization. It's not kind of a waterfall. Here's the strategy for the quarter. Everyone go execute. And so it really kind of it equips people with a little bit of autonomy. But everyone then, you know what you're going to do, and the result side of it really focuses you on how to achieve that and how to measure it. And they can change. OKRs can change as you go through them in a kind of agile way, like life. But yeah, I suppose maybe I'm not doing it justice, but it just really helps for alignment and just focus for Circle.
How about you, Ray? Like, how is your planning process? Do you have like a formal like a framework that you follow? Like, how does it work? Or is it like top down? The CEO is a visionary, and this is what we're gonna do for the next year. How does it work in Money?
We also use OKRs. So the way it goes is we obviously try to establish where we want it to be at the end of the year, and how do we how do we achieve that? How much growth do we need to like have month over month? And from there, everyone just figured out what and how much contribution they can give. So an example would be a random one just for everyone to relate. Probably, let's say, I need to acquire 10,000 more customers. So the sales would say we will acquire 5,000 of that from on-the-ground activities, 5,000 on the digital side. We can say if we have something that we're building that would probably acquire 2,500 more, then we will do 2,500 more. And over time, everyone in the team, since they try and think about it that way, so it could happen wherein you actually have a surplus of, and you can actually like reach your target or more. And that's, I hope that explains it in a very simple way how OKRs work and how it eventually helps everyone. So you decide on how much you can contribute, and eventually everyone's contributions end up towards the company's goals. So that's how we plan in terms of how I want to do it, but in terms of the product that we're going to roll out, it's always a decision on, since just for True Money, it's a decision on what part of the financial transactions we want to focus on. So let's say if we want to open up international remittance by second quarter, it all starts with those types of like big milestones. Domestic and domestic remittance, like for example, when we started out, we were asking what would be the first product that we roll out. So some companies actually say they want a product that people can use already. For us, when we asked around, people wanted to get their money. But we still needed to build something. So what we built was actually a product that essentially gave people their money, but also enabled them to take that money as fast as they can out of the system. So probably a different company would say that's crazy. You have to keep the money in, but that's where we started from. And once we started building that, we say now people are actually using it. then we started building out what would probably be the first set of transactions that they want to use. So they said, I want to pay bills. And I say, they wanted to pay bills, so we built something that they could pay bills but not keep their money in. Because we still knew that they wanted their money. So we just built a platform that allowed them to pay their bills after taking their money out. So, but if we force them to, like, if we force their money inside their wallets, their digital wallets, I'm not confident that they would probably have stayed as our customers, because we allow them to satisfy their need first, and then what their usage for that need, that's what we went after next. So that's actually how we go about it.
It's funny you say that around the wallet concept, because that was one of the features when I came. I was like, oh, let's get everyone using First Circle lending into the wallet, and so everyone had their login on First Circle account, and we were like, ding, here's your cash, and they just saw numbers on the screen, and everyone's like, but how do I get it? And we actually, that feature's completely gone. We now just send it straight to your bank account, and no one has a wallet. So I feel your pain.
So, but I want to unpack that further. Like, for many wallet companies, like, you're absolutely right. The business model is to keep the money in the wallet, get them spending that money, because a lot of these e-wallet providers make money when there's transactions using the wallet. So what you proposed was actually counterintuitive. It might have been, I imagine, I don't know if this is true for your organization, but in many organizations, like, you would get some conflict or pushback between the business and product, right? Because maybe this is like counterintuitive, maybe this might jeopardize revenue or things like that. How are you able to push that idea and get buy-in from the other stakeholders?
It goes back to them going on the field. So we went and interviewed factory workers. They only have 1 hour of break to get their salaries. If they can't get their salaries around that time, they go back and work again, and probably they will go out around 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Everyone was aware of that need, so it didn't actually take a lot of convincing. It was just more of a, let's do this, and let's do this for X couple of months. And then we figured out, I think we went as far as, I was in the factory dispersing money, because I need to experience how painful it is for people to, one, if I am the one facilitating or the disbursement, giving out their money, and also for the people that are there rushing, trying to contact their family during their break time. Everyone needed to understand that, or else we would have fallen back to, let's keep their money in the wallets, and then we figure out how they can use it. But they need something. They need to pay they need to buy for something for their kids. They need to pay for their dinner.
Right.
So those are so
You
everyone.
gotta be ready to get your hands dirty. That's exactly it.
Like, how about, like, Johan, you mentioned, okay, you have to be ready to get your hands dirty. Do you have to get your hands dirty? Like, who are the stakeholders you need to kind of convince or manage, or this is filthy? Okay.
You're looking at a sales pitch each and every time you're talking with your executives, the board, the investors, the partners, your strategic partners, even your customers and users. It's always a sales pitch that you have to understand what their pain is, but at the same time use that understanding to pitch your idea to them, whether it's a process that you want them to change, whether it's a new feature that you want to upsell to your executive board to say, okay, here's how we want to disperse the money, or whether it's a new business model. I want to partner with X number of banks, because even if we're a solutions company for supply chain, we're actually solving all of their visibility issues. The banks are actually not seeing the provenance of the shipment. Therefore, we're at the crux of solving that problem. Being able to push that to your investors, to your board, is actually more of a selling skill than anything.
So how do you sell? Like, do you create a fancy business case to justify your roadmap, your plans? Or do you just wine and dine your investors, or try to convince them to give you more
money?
money?
That was 2 companies ago, man. So
Okay.
don't bring that here.
Okay. How do you do it?
But yeah, I mean, having been in sales, it was also a bit easier for me because I did wine and dine a few customers before. But that's not the point here. You need to be able to like actually just listen to them, frankly. I mean, it may be your boss saying, here's how I see this happening, and this is our goal financially. You have a 10 million whatever dollar goal at the at the end of 6 months. You need to reach that goal, and you need to convince him that you're also going to be able to reach that goal somehow, whether that be by a presentation with a fancy PowerPoint in a conference room meeting, or whether it be testing it out on the side. And do try this very carefully though. Testing it out on the side and experimenting your ideas to see if it works on a small scale, and then actually going back to the group and say, oh, I actually tested it out. Here's my data. It works. It's being adopted. Why? Because I talked to this partner, and they're actually interested in doing it. And then you actually build it into the product after you get approval. So I don't think there's any one method. I mean, you can't go just like doing slidewares every time. Although you must justify, you must communicate, you must do it clearly. But you also have to like have savvy negotiations, and it's gonna be a pain for the most part.
Do you create like different versions of your roadmap for different audiences? Like for example, the investor, they get something like this,
Yes.
and the CEO
Yes.
gets something like this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you'll have to do that work. Exactly. I think we all do that. I think in this group, it's if you're looking at the investors, then your roadmap is very very succinct. Okay, like I think that's the right word.
Yeah.
I wanted to do simple. Investors might be watching, but the point here is it has to be succinct.
You have to look
It has
smart,
to-
right? Like,
Yeah, and it has to be easy enough for them to digest in under 2 minutes, for example. Because your investors are not going to stay there, not going to stay awake for more than that long.
and then for your engineers, what do you present to your engineers?
Oh Jesus Christ, that's going to be a long 5-slide. This is the what and the how, and oh by the way, here's a snippet, and here's the UX in balsamic, and then here's.
Otherwise, it won't be dev ready. You
Well,
won't-
why are you bringing up your past? But yeah, that is actually our past. Dev
Okay.
wouldn't lift a finger, literally, if we didn't outline everything from customer journey, personas, and we still do personas now, but it's just more of here's the persona. I'm drawing it up, and I'm really lucky to have really good BAs to actually catch on. Because I start with a piece of paper. I have like 3 notebooks in my bag right now, and it's usually over dinner, and I take a picture. You must probably do that also. Like you're having dinner with your boss or beers or whatever, and then you're scribbling a UX like a flow, and then you take a picture and you send it to your BA.
I'm not that mean to them.
I'm not mean to her. Like, they're so really good at it.
Yeah, okay.
So, but yeah, that's the process.
How about you, Brian? Do you have different versions of your roadmap? Like, what's the level of detail for the engineers versus, let's say, what you present to your CEO and other partners?
We have different versions, but that's as time moves on, it determines the different versions. So you have a version that you believe in the morning, and then it changes by the afternoon, and that isn't actually a joke. It changes very frequently.
That's why engineers hate you.
That's what, yeah, I buy them donuts.
Okay.
It actually, yeah,
Burn maps
yeah.
instead of roadmaps.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I was actually speaking to one of my ex-colleagues 2 nights ago, and he just interviewed for, he lives in Dublin, he just interviewed for a new company, and they asked him, present us your 6 to 12 month roadmap for what you do. And I was kind of, what did you say? And he came back and he said, well, I told them that's bullshit. And I said, well, if I interviewed somebody and they told me anything else, then, I don't think I would hire them. It does also, to be fair, it does also depend on where the company is. So, if you're kind of a seed company and you go in and say, yeah, I'm going to join as, I don't know, VP of product or something, and, there's 6 people in a room and you present a year roadmap, there's no value in that, because you're just blue skying. totally, and it's fun. It's great fun, but there's no point. But I would suppose if you're kind of Series D or something, you know, everything's much more structured. You know, investors expect a lot more process and structure, and you talk to more people, and you research teams. Yeah, fine. Maybe a 6 to 12 month roadmap is achievable, and then I don't know. I've never worked in a Series D company. But yeah, I suppose to go back to your original question, how we do it, just trying to synthesize what everyone kind of believes on a quarterly basis as to what is the kind of, you could nearly put it in one slide in bullet points, what is the kind of things that we need to go on. And if you've got a good design and kind of product people, and you've got good structures and processes set up between people like support and sales that are talking to your customers on a daily basis, then you kind of tend to iterate towards the goal. And it could look a lot different kind of halfway through, but that's the point.
How about you, Ray? Do you change your roadmap every 4 hours or something?
4 hours.
Yeah.
Actually, it's actually very true. So it depends on where the company is. So in True Money, I started out totally like not even bringing up a roadmap because I know that we were still figuring things out, and probably I'm just going to bring a jargon that's going to stress everyone out and probably get thrown out. Because I think one of the things that's very important as a product person or product manager is people will trust what you say, and you need to always, that's kind of your how do you say this? That's how they see you, right? So the more you work for the company, the more you need to build the trust, because most of the time you don't have a team. Like the engineering doesn't report to you. Business certainly doesn't report to you. But you have to convince them that how you see things happening is the right way to go about it. And you always have to build on top of that. So me bringing up a roadmap in the first probably 6 or 7 months wasn't a good idea. So, but I was constantly trying to convince them to plan ahead for like further back ahead, like plan for 1 month before, or maybe, hello, yeah. So maybe plan for 2 weeks out before, when it was just 1 week. Over time, they started to see the value of it because they see less conflicts, they see less projects being dropped. The day I actually, like, we've been around for like 3 years already, and we're still up to a 3-month roadmap. So, but I'm still constantly trying to work with everyone on that one, because it's also difficult. As sometimes as on-the-go people, we want our ideas, we fire our ideas as soon as we get up. We don't normally try to think about what we want to do 2 months ahead. But in an ever-growing company, everyone needs to get into that mindset that sooner or later everyone has to plan, or else there will be product launches that that has no marketing campaigns whatsoever. There will be product launches that there's no monitoring at all. So it's just there. It's somebody is using it, but you don't know if it's actually working or if it is hurting your company as a whole. So that's how I've tried to lead road mapping, and how I try to approach road mapping in general, based on what True Money Philippines context is.
Do you so you mentioned that you use your roadmap as a way to get people to plan, to get to get them to look forward to what they want to do and what you want to achieve, and also to get trust, right?
Yeah.
So, but do you also then share your roadmap with your customers? Do you use your roadmap as a way to get like interest or trust from your customers? Do you publish your roadmap publicly?
I wish we had customers who are interested in what we're building, but they're not. So they're just interested in how they get their, one, what do we do with their money? Second, how do they get their money back? How do they earn? And can we stop having problems in the system? So that's the only thing that they care about. They do, we do have a very good customer base though, in terms of them requesting for, can you work with my local biller because 10 of my neighbors are paying for this electric cooperative. So those types of feedback, we take them very seriously, and we send out a salesperson in that area and try to book a meeting and try to figure out how can we help that local community there. So yeah, I wish we had a customer that valued roadmaps and what we were planning, but no.
It's a very unique situation. You have mountains of data there.
About,
Like retail is actually very interesting, actually.
but Johan, I saw your website. I think you do share your roadmap, right? There was a time the Open
Yeah.
Port was sharing
We
it.
still do.
Okay,
We
so
still
why do you
now.
share your roadmap to the public,
Well,
your customers?
First things first, it's not the actual roadmap that we built against. So the actual roadmap that we built against is very much quarterly, monthly. We have a 2-year roadmap that never gets to 2 years, obviously. But we have a quarterly major release and a monthly release that we always iterate on. That's internal. And that's very, very detailed. Detailed down to like feature and actual component level. And it's very, I would say in our case, because we do not have unlimited funds, as with like a lot of us startups, we have to make sure that whatever we build brings value to the bigger puzzle. If the puzzle is X revenue, X number of enterprise customers, then it has to fit in. Let's say, for example, we had to do a route optimization functionality for one customer, but it didn't fit any other customer in the ecosystem. So we actually had to partner externally and maybe bleed a bit of revenue, share that, but at least we didn't actually use our own capacity. That's the internal roadmap. The external roadmap was a lot of summarized goals from those internal roadmaps. And the reason why I'm trying to figure out the words for that is it's not entirely accurate what we publish outside to investors and to the public. And it's also a different version when you're talking with a customer in conference room meetings. So when you're talking with a specific enterprise customer that's going to give you tens of thousands of dollars of monthly revenue, SaaS revenue, you're going to want to tailor that roadmap to exactly what he wants, or what that customer needs, or what you think that customer needs according to your research.
Wouldn't that be frustrating? Like you would then come back to your engineers and say, "Oh, by the way, we promised this plan for customer X, but oh, by the way, the executives expect feature Y." So how do you manage that?
You want me to name the name of the person that we both worked with? And
No, I'm curious.
But yes, it actually is. It is frustrating because you come back to your office and to your engineers and say, "Here's," because not all of what you presented to this X big multinational customer will be taken at face value, obviously. But one of those things that are not in your internal roadmap will surprise your dev team. The minute you come back and say, "Oh, by the way, we're gonna have to do this because it came up, it's gonna close the deal," and you're actually also selling as a product owner. So it is what it is. You just have to also then get buy-in with your internal teams. And what you never, ever, ever do, and I failed at this miserably a few companies ago, is tell them, "Because I say so." That's the most biggest thing that you can make, make a mistake out of. And I think we all agree there. So.
How about you, Brian? Like, do you share your roadmap with your customers or with your partners?
The concepts that we try to do, yeah, of course. And they tend to, as most people have spoken about, they're related to the business goals. So we're trying to hit X revenue, and kind of a boring example would be we're trying to hit X revenue, we're trying to improve kind of onboarding times and processing times, so we're going to build these new features and these new processing engines, and we're going to risk score doing this. And behind all of those will be features on the customer side, behind the internal features, be kind of new whole teams ramped up with software that they use that we build, new underwriting logic, all of that stuff that we would do. But broadly, yeah, I mean, anyone who invests in a company wants to know what are you guys doing, and product tends to, at least in First Circle, have some hand at one stage of all of those developments.
So would it be fair to say that the roadmap not only kind of helps in planning, but also to excite and engage your partners, investors? Would that be fair also?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is exciting when you're a growing company and you have VCs investing.
Right.
I mean, they get excited. They get excited by the market. They get excited by the management team. And so when you present them and you do curves that go like this, exactly. They like hockey sticks. They get pretty happy, and then they go, "How are you going to do that?" And then you say, "We've got one of the best product teams in Southeast Asia." Sorry, guys. We don't share investors. So we tell them that, and then they go, "Okay, so what are you guys going to do?" And we a couple of bullet points and kind of talk about that. And yeah, I mean, some investors, I don't have huge input to the investors, to be honest, but some investors dig deeper, and some investors just want to see the numbers,
Right.
and some investors have kind of product sense and want to see that. So it varies.
So Brian, you went through an exciting kind of phase in your in your entrepreneurial journey. You were able to raise Series A, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so tell us about that. How did that? So Series A, like for many startups, like a big milestone, right? You're able to join the big leagues. You have a lot more funding. You have more. Hopefully, you're at that point. You have a lot. You're gaining traction and all that. So how did that affect how your roadmap? How much did it affect your roadmap?
Yeah, so yeah, we closed out Series A kind of around the summertime, and then announced it a couple of months later. So yeah, we closed out a round of about $26 million, which was split between debt and equity. And yeah, it completely changed. It completely changed nearly all elements of the business. It kind of indicated what we were trying to do, because when you raise seed, you're trying to get some product market fit, and you're doing it especially when you're lending money on a shoestring. So yeah, it was a great, first of all, relief to get that in. And then it allows us to go and kind of target the market, really double down on what we want to do, knowing that the investors are behind us.
So did you become more ambitious? How did it affect your roadmap?
Yeah, completely more ambitious as a business. So the targets that we have are pretty ambitious. So Patrick talks a big game, and he expects us to kind of jump in the car with him and execute behind. So yeah, we're hiring. I would like, if we could double our engineering team tomorrow, we would. If we could get the right people, if we could double product team, we would. If we could build an entire design function that can get the people, we would. So we are amplifying everything, kind of 2-3x if we can. And we're actually moving office in the next month or two, probably, to try and get somewhere that's going to last us for the next couple of years, and kind of that we can grow into. So it's a fun time.
How about you, Johan? You don't have to share too much details, but I know you went through a lot. Your business went through a lot of pivots. For a while, you were trying to do an ICO, because that was shared in your website. Like how like all these different pivots. How did that affect your roadmap and your planning?
Well, it obliterated the roadmap. The roadmap was almost not there. But the pivots actually do hurt. I mean, a lot of startups do pivots. Even so now, we're well, we haven't pivoted for a while, because the last pivot actually, it really depends how badly the pivot happens. It actually erodes a company when you pivot so far from your original direction. And what's the role of product owners in this scenario is being able to like tell your management, this was our direction. We're getting a bit of traction on it. Can we stay on the course for a few more months, for example? And it's your job as product owners to be able to like educate everybody else in the management team to understand that pivoting so badly or so far from your original course actually hurts. It may be a new, shiny business model. It may be a very attractive, really huge addressable market that you want to go into. But if it's not something that you're good at, you might as well just partner up with somebody else that actually does it better than you. Yeah.
How about you, Ray? So you now True Money is expanding internationally. Like, how are you? Like, how does that work? How do you integrate your roadmap for the Philippines with what's happening in other countries? How how does the planning process here locally trickle upward kind of and be integrated with the bigger plan of True Money in the region?
So the way each country operates is we actually independently move. So what we do in the Philippines doesn't necessarily affect the plans in Cambodia, or nor what is in the region. From as far as I know and as I have experienced is most of the plans probably goes out in this area. So how it goes is we just have, to be honest, there's no like a regional roadmap. Okay. There's never been like all countries launch this, or it's always been tailored fit to what the country needs. So for example, we cannot launch so in Cambodia, remittance is king. And remittance in Cambodia happens from this corner to that corner. That's how they send money. And that's how short the distance for them sending money is. In the Philippines, though, that's not the case. People still go to the bus lines, give the bus driver the cash, give this to my mom, versus going to Smart Padala or Western Union because they don't want the extra cash. The bus driver is their cousin, so they won't charge anything extra. So remittance doesn't work as well in the Philippines. Even though there's a lot of money coming in the Philippines through remittance, but we figured out some other ways to help the community grow and how they can serve. So each country depends on what the behavior of the country is. So there's been no regional roadmap as far as I've seen.
All right.
And I don't see that happening in Southeast Asia because it's very different.
Each market is very different.
Very different.
Yeah. Okay.
Southeast Asia is very different.
All right. Okay. So so what I want to do is open up the questions to people in the audience. So far we've had a very, very interesting conversation, but I do know that many of you may have questions in your head. So now's the time to ask. Does anybody in the audience have any question? Please.
Hi, sorry, I have two questions, but you don't have to answer both. First one is, what measures do you consider to prioritize what you put into your product roadmap? Because yes, you do have your OKRs or KPIs. It can be like eligible base and what potential revenue you can get out of it. There's also like strategic advantage, product enhancement. Does this increase activation, increase engagement, or overall drives usage? That's another one. Or another one is you really want to do this product extension because it opens up a new market, or it's a new product or a new product. In your cases, like these are like many conflicting things that prioritize or deprioritize what gets built first and what gets built or not built at all, right? So that's one question. The second is in relation to the everyone, I guess most teams are in agile environments, in agile teams. So my question is, how do you manage curveballs that severely impact product timelines? And how does this play with prioritization and resource management?
Who wants to get the first question?
Curveball. I heard curveball and I just like this lost it.
Prioritization.
That's a good question.
How about the prioritization question first? Like how do you prioritize?
Well, for a time it was always whichever customer screams the loudest. Okay.
That's a very honest answer.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot. Even with a huge enterprise company, we've seen that a lot. But more so if you're a startup and you only have like 5 or 6 multinational customers actually paying the bill, then it actually hurts a lot more. And just to answer your question, if that customer actually has contracts in 3 countries that you operate in, he's definitely the loudest. And that definitely hurts. So it always is, the priorities is always going to be strategic plus immediate. I know that's a paradox. That's almost impossible to balance.
Sure, what can pay the bills, what can keep the business going?
I mean, how fast are you gonna lose this customer if you don't give in today or this week, versus yes, I want to do this feature because it's strategic. It's gonna give me a partnership that's gonna be long term, a 2-year contract with X revenue. But that hurts that immediate problem.
But what do you do if that kind of solving that problem will take you away from the original vision of the company or your strategic goals? What do you do then?
To be absolutely honest, as you will always report to a CEO or a C-level person, management. So it's largely dependent on how they see things. It's your job to make sure that they see things as objectively as possible and as long-term as possible for the company. Knowing that you have X months of burn left in the company, for example. But ultimately that choice is up to your leadership. And the best you can do is fight for it, justify that this customer screaming and threatening to fire you is actually not going to happen because you're embedded with their ERP, for example. And they're not going to fire you just because of that, because you're being used by 50 truckers, for example. That's just an example here. So it may not be the exact situation for you guys, but you have to be able to play chess a bit and predict 2 or 3 steps down the road. Are they calling a bluff? Are they really gonna fire you? Right? Is your boss, is your CEO really seeing the bigger picture here that if you pivot and do this, it's gonna cost you 3 months worth of development time towards a bigger strategy? Right?
How about you, Brian? How do you balance the short term versus the long term? How do you prioritize?
Yeah, it's very, very, very hard. I think it's a good question. I think that, there's probably 2 levels that you can look at it. At the product owner level, so the people actually hearing about the bugs and trying to iterate and improve the product as fast as possible. You can put in guidelines. I suppose maybe that's the phrase, guidelines, not rules. I would say, I think probably most people here know the RICE prioritization framework. Intercom released that and talk about it a lot. So that looks at kind of 4 dimensions: reach, impact, I think the confidence in those scores, and then the effort that it will take for you to build that. If you combine some semblance of strategy or direction into that, I think you're not too far off as a product owner to kind of go, how many people does it affect? How big is the impact that we're going to do by making this change? So for example, someone's crying next to you because they work in sales and the integration to Close.io doesn't work right, and then you can kind of a little bit objectively kind of go, look, it affects one person, or maybe it affects every customer that comes in, which is obviously a different ball game. And you got one is a critical bug maybe, and one is maybe a bug that you put in the backlog for a while. So I suppose that's at the product owner level. Yeah, as a product leader, that's a different ball game, because you got to take into account the founders, a lot more of the strategy and kind of thinking about the direction and kind of what the sum of the parts will roll up to. It depends. I think a lot of it comes down to trust in your relationships. Actually, ultimately, we're all humans. We all sit in a room and we all see the world slightly different. So, it's kind of just good, as you say, good negotiation and kind of trashing it out, and hopefully you have each other's back and you kind of trust each other to a greater or lesser extent, and you're open people. I don't know how practical that is, but did that answer your question in a way?
Yeah, it did.
How about you, Ray? How do you prioritize?
How they do it? No.
You screams the loudest.
We actually flip a coin.
Over in True Money, we use Jack and Point. See, they laugh. That's true. No, so as Brian said, so you have to start with a framework. How do you go about it? How many customers are affected? You always have to start with the problem that you're trying to fix. If very mature organizations can talk about the problems that they want to fix and list them one by one, and they say, we go after this problem first, and then this next, and then this one. Everything, you'll probably see that your roadmap will line up after that, because you already know what to build. It's very easy to think about what to build next. Which one to build next is different. So I myself try to ask, what is the problem that we need to fix? Are we going after the risk problem that we have, or going after the sales problem that we have, or going after the customer problem that we have. Then from there, a sort of framework will probably show up. Different companies will do it. For me, it all starts with the problem. On the second one, which is how do you handle curveballs, communicate. So as product leaders and owners, we always err on the side of over communication. People in True Money sometimes tell me, you explain too long, but those probably are the smartest guys in the room. But that they are not my main customers there. My customers are the ones in operations, the one who doesn't see the entire picture and spends their day the most looking down, trying to keep the business running. But they are also the ones who need to understand what's happening first and foremost. So communicate, communicate, communicate. When people see that you're not hiding anything, once you tell them that something went way out of plan, more often than not, they will support you because they know you're not hiding. You didn't do it. That didn't happen because of something somebody did or you did. It's just the nature of things that happen. So, yeah. I hope that answered your question. Jack and Boy.
Anyone want to take the curveball question? Like how you handle curveballs?
What was the curveball? How does it originate? Was it from, like, say, engineering? Was it like technical debt?
Yeah, because it's mostly technical debt. Like, for example, everyone's planning to build do this thing for quarter 2. But then again, you know, when you're doing agile, you just discover problems along the way, and it has to be prioritized, right? And how do you like manage that part? And agree that it's really a function of like over communicating across all levels. But then it now becomes a question of like, sometimes a problem that you're trying to solve actually will take out more of your limited dev resources, right? So how do you now bump out other stuff or like put things on top? Like, I just want to pick your brain how you guys do it on your teams.
Communicate. Communicate. Say, I messed up. We need to fix this. You need to keep your organization honest. If you start, if as product leaders, we are the ones who will be the leaders as well in trying to bury things that we mess up or the team messes up, then it builds up to something else. So, and trust me guys, it's not as bad as you think. There will be instances where you probably lose a lot of revenue because of something that happened. But it wasn't done out of dishonesty. And the most important thing when a problem happens is actually to get the team together and fix it. When you start trying to hide what happened, look, if it's actually your fault, then you need to take responsibility of it. What happens, happens. Don't take the entire company out because of you. Right? This just a very honest answer to that actually. If it's a technical debt, we also call it unintended features. So you might want to say that, hey, I discovered an unintentional features. We actually don't book our orders. At least you try to inject some humor in it, but always take responsibility and over-communicate, I guess.
It's a surprise feature. I love developers when they do that. Oh, by the way, we have a new feature now. Okay. Can I sell it? We actually have to fix it.
You have to fix it first before you say, okay. But that was a great question.
Not always.
Not always. Does anybody else have any question? Go ahead.
So how do you manage your associate product managers or product managers throughout this, or in your case, BAs throughout this? Because you're gonna have something up there in like quarter 1, and then of course it's gonna change throughout. How do you navigate your APMs and PMs and or BAs throughout this?
I don't all have BAs. But, oh yeah.
Your direct lines.
How do you manage?
First off, I never think of them as direct reports at all because they're a team. If not for them, I'd have made five times more mistakes than I did now. So yeah, we have BAs and PMs in a few countries. Like I had one in India and Pakistan, and strategically so they have to be there to feel exactly what I would have flown there and spent 2 weeks for and doing, right? Alignment is just simply, again, raise right, like communicating and making sure that everyone's honest enough to admit to their mistakes. Or if you actually planned incorrectly, you missed a few things out, or your CEO suddenly says, this is the new shiny thing that we will go after as a company, then you just rally as a team and try to see what you can pick up from your existing roadmap that you'll have to change and align. There's no one method to aligning people other than listening and speaking with them with radical candor. Just like absolutely say, it is what it is. We have to do this. If we don't, we either risk getting left behind or whatever other consequence, right? So you just have to communicate.
How about you, Brian? How do you manage your direct reports?
Yeah, I think it's really about empowerment. So making sure they're equipped with the knowledge of the communications, the inputs, they have the process, the tooling, the right engineers, designers, and all those process and communication points are in place, and they know what they're supposed to be doing, and let them execute. And then just keep checking in. We use Asana, Slack, Notion, Jira.
All at the same time?
Oh no, genuinely, all at the same time, yeah. I get lots of notifications. But they have their place. I do truly believe that. It seems like overkill, and some days that you get lost, if you're not careful. But they do have their place, and it manages to keep the right communications going to the right people at the right times.
All right, great. Any other questions? We have time for one more. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jester. Recently, here in the Philippines, there are more and more technologies are being introduced, like fintech, blockchain, ICO, or big data, whatever. And a lot of people do not know about it, especially the consumers, because especially your products, especially TrueMoney. You mentioned that people don't know how it works. They just want their money. They just want to know how they're gonna get paid or whatever. So I think the main problem with companies like yours that are introducing new technologies in the Philippines specifically, because we're not like super high tech, is how you educate your consumers. So what are your efforts to help your educate your consumers?
I guess that will be different companies will answer that differently. In TrueMoney, we believe in relationships. So we hire local sales teams. So our TrueMoney centers in Davao work with people who are Davaoenos, who speak the language. As you said, so we're trying to build the technology intelligence in the Philippines to a higher degree. And unfortunately, it has to go with education. Education is very expensive though. So for anyone in a startup and trying to say, we will educate people, it's very, very expensive, especially in the Philippines. So you need to find that balance in what is the most effective way of educating our market. For our market, it's relationship. If they know who you are and you visit them regularly and you talk to them regularly, they would be very, very participative. As Filipinos, we know that once we are very loyal and faithful to something, but that thing needs to earn our faithfulness and our trust. So once you get that from your customers, the next responsibility is to be true to that and always make sure it happens. Hindi lang siya ningas ko gun. Yeah, know what I mean? Wherein you're very active in educating them in the beginning, and then once they're using your product, you suddenly fizzle out because your budget doesn't allow you to educate as much. So if education is very important, relationship is important, intro money. So that's because we're working with 45-year-old nanays, lolas. You give them a smartphone, and actually it's smartphone penetration is, I forgot the exact number, but if you go to a sari-sari store, smartphone is, they use that for personal communication. They don't use that. They don't have an extra phone for business. They won't use it for business. Convincing them otherwise, it's going to be very tough. And that's why we provided them with the technology, and we always educate them with how it works. Also keep it simple kung may technology. Try not to be very, very fancy.
What about you guys?
Yeah, Lester, was it? Jester?
Jester.
I suppose before digging into the education part of the question, I suppose I would disagree, kindly disagree with two of your points. Which firstly is, I suppose, technology and an appreciation of technology. A lot of our answers here tended to nearly start at the business. And as product, you really are a business function. It's coupling and it's building technology in order to drive the business forward. And so I don't really worry a whole lot that people, anyone anywhere in the world don't really love our technology, or any technology for that matter, because of the technology itself. I mean, looking at beautiful code because, it wasn't that well constructed, but what does it do? Where's the value in it, and what problems does it solve? So you weren't making that point per se, but I think it is an important one, certainly from a product perspective. If you're an engineer, great, love your technology, love your stack. The second piece maybe that I disagree is on Filipinos and their adoption of technology or appreciation of technology. So to Ray's point, if you look at adoption of mobile usage, smartphone usage, if you look at time spent on Facebook or on social media, on apps, the Philippines ranks nearly the highest in the world on those measures. So where our problem to education is, and you talked about fintech, our problem as First Circle is on financial literacy. So when you look at the percentages of penetrations of mobile and Facebook, and you then look at what's the penetration of credit cards, and credit cards have been in the world for 20, 30 years or whatever it has, and you look at the Philippines, it's like 4%.
Yeah, 4%.
So there's our problem in education. So when we're an organization and we're a product company, but we're trying to lend money to not sophisticated companies, small to medium enterprises, and they sign up. A lot of times customers, our challenge is to also get the money back. And a lot of the times, actually, customers are growing businesses, but they just don't understand the type of lending that they've engaged with us. They don't understand that it's coupled to the trade document that they've submitted. They just think, hey, it's a loan. I'll pay it back whenever I kind of want money. Someone's gone to hospital, I'll use that money and First Circle can wait. But that's not what we do. And that's kind of not our model. That's not the concept that we're going for. It's not a generic, that's what we used to do. It's not a generic loan. And that's where we really grapple, because we want to build strong companies. We want our customers to be strong, and we want them to grow with us. And I think that financial illiteracy is actually hampering customers from doing the right thing and building their credit limits with us, and not engaging and not paying late fees and all of those. So I would say that's our challenge, not big data per se, as an example.
Well, that's a surprising example that you just outlined there. The education, I think the strategy that we do, it's not an intentional strategy, but we work with drivers a lot, operators, transporters, fish vendors even, that deliver goods and use our app as an invoice, as collateral, basically. So it's fairly simple for them to grasp what's your incentive to understand the use of the OpenPort software to get money. If you don't understand this, simple as it may be, then you won't get your money. You're gonna have to wait for 60 days for whatever Rustan's grocery store to pay you back. You want your money in 10 days, then you use our software. It's very simple in our case because we're not the lenders. We're the platform for the lenders. And for banks that work with us, it's also very straightforward because they will never invest in building those logistics technologies that go down to retail level. They may spin up a new company and dabble in it, but it's not in their best interest. They're not in our market. I'm talking about a specific case of logistics, supply chain, drivers talking to vendors. But put that in any context, I think it would help you as a product owner to think of what do you want, what do you as a customer want from my product, or that my product can give you, so that you will then adopt it to its maximum potential. For drivers, the drivers will want their rewards so that they don't steal money from the trucks, or that they don't funnel fuel out of the actual vehicle. This happens. Tires get stolen, fuel gets leaked, gets sold out. So we did a micro rewards mechanism so that the drivers will actually use the app, so that now the Nestle's will always see the entire shipment trail. Because if you don't incentivize, you always keep on penalizing these drivers, they're gonna just leave and find another job, or pretend to be another John Doe and get another driver job somewhere else in another transporter. You lose that traction, okay? So in our case, the education just simply comes inherently because there is a need to use the software or the solution. It's not always the software, it's sometimes a process. So I kept on bringing this up in our old company before. What's in it for you? What's in it for me? So you kind of have to think and empathize as your customer. You have to empathize as them, so that you'll be able to come up with an easier way to educate and have them adopt your software.
Thanks.
Okay, so just one final question from me to end our session, but very, very insightful answer so far. Would you care to share what's in your roadmap right now? Anything exciting that we can look forward to from True Money? Don't have to share anything confidential, but if you want to, that's perfectly fine. It's just us and our streaming audience.
So, nothing really because we built most of our products already the past year. But basically, we're moving into trying to help the sari-sari stores become more profitable and go to a level wherein they would think highly of their businesses more and more. So that's our goal for the rest of the year. Not just a simple sari-sari store, they actually the sari-sari store.
Like what will you introduce? Any new features?
For example, one of the main things, so fun fact for everyone, sari-sari stores, you know where I hope everyone lives near a sari-sari store, right? So one of the things that we're trying to do is enable sari-sari stores to be a pickup point for anything you've delivered. It's difficult in the Philippines to find what your address is in Pagbilangan Street, Legazpi, Albay. So we're trying to enable the sari-sari stores. Sari-sari stores are easy. I can just ask, saan ang tindahan ni June? They would probably be able to point you. Everyone would probably be able to know where that is. We're trying to enable more sari-sari stores to that point.
Wow, from fintech to e-commerce. Wow, you heard it here first, huh? Okay. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. How about you, Brian? Anything interesting going on in First Circle?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I think we're going to completely rebrand. So we're going to get new logos, new color schemes. We're going to reskin all of our customer experience. We're going to rebuild some of our infrastructure on the internal side, so both the risk processing engine from ground up, start again completely. And we are going to probably tear down some of the existing internal processes, really to optimize all of our internal processes. So if you think about, we need to KYC and onboard everyone, we need to process a lot of documentation. So we're going to really try to take that down from hours to minutes, so we can give that kind of magical experience is what we're trying to go after, that you can upload a document and be told in, say, 3 minutes if we're going to fund that. So that's kind of the first iteration. I said we didn't have roadmaps, but this is kind of the detail we do work at. And after that, we're going to look at building kind of new features and trying to go as a more platform approach to start to ensure that the data is created on our platform rather than merely uploaded. So that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to have a chat with OpenPort, and we're going to talk about how we can be a lender on their platform. But yeah, I think it's an exciting time. So we have lots to fill our pockets with.
Any plans to go abroad outside the Philippines?
We've talked about it, and then we've realized that we need to stretch ourselves and cut ourselves in two to do it. So it's just finding the time and the right team that we can execute with, or kind of JVs on the ground, joint ventures on the ground that we can do. So we're talking to a couple of lawyers, and we're kind of feeding out a couple of markets. Thailand and Indonesia are probably our primary ones that we're looking at, maybe leaning towards Indonesia at the moment. But again, that's, if I'm back here next year and you ask me the same question, I'll probably have the same answer realistically.
All right. How about you, Johan? Anything interesting going on?
Well, without going into too much detail, we'll probably be in Thailand and Indonesia very soon. So we do need, and by doing that, by saying that it's going to be a Philippines-led initiative now. I think a lot of the new products will be coming out from the Philippines mainly. A lot has happened with OpenPort. OpenPort's been in the news for a while now, good and bad, but there's going to be a lot of changes. Rebranding of the actual company is going to be happening fairly soon. There's going to be changes in the structure of the product itself, the offering. Now it's going to be a lot more focused on being a fintech solution rather than a supply chain software solution that happens to have a fintech appendix to it. So it's going to be totally repackaged, basically. May or may not even be carrying any of the badges it has now. But it's an exciting time. Right. And it's going to be a Philippines-led opportunity now. Yeah, that's as far as I can go.
Okay, all right. Okay, all very exciting. Okay, so please join me in thanking our distinguished panel of speakers. Please join me in showing our appreciation. So for the next part, what we'd also like you to do is maybe hang around. Maybe we can have a discussion of, maybe if you guys have time, maybe you can kind of hang around, and maybe if any of you are going through your road mapping process, now is the time to ask questions. There's still dinner, have some drinks. Let's do some networking. The also thing we'd like to do is also invite volunteers for Product PH. I'll let Yana share more.
Thanks for coming tonight. So we are doing this kind of event every month, but as a community, we are trying to make more value. So like this time we talk about the roadmap and then this format, but probably we can improve for you guys to get something better as a professional. So we are happy to have more organizers to extend our activity, and also after this event, I will send a survey on the email and then the event page. So I really want to hear what's your takeaway and then what's useful from this event, because we just made the talk session this time, but probably we can make it more exciting next time. So, and then we can build all the community experience together. So that's what I personally want to do. So please help us. Let us hear your experience.
All right. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for coming. So again, have dinner, please network, ask our distinguished panel speakers. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Next time.